Welcome to Martini Time. Boy, am I pumped up today. So, since I've been watching Ken Burns' Vietnam, I wanted to revisit Apocalypse Now, which I don't think I've seen since it first came out. So I had just, when it's years since you see a movie, you just have vague shadow memories of it, But now I went back and saw it today, and I've just been blown away by it, because held in juxtaposition to the documentary, it's kind of like the cross. So Ken Burns' documentary is the horizontal beam of time, history, past, documentary, facts, journalism, reality. Boom. Apocalypse Now, while you may think it's about the horizontal, it's really about this. It's a vertical story. It's the journey of the hero. Now, if you should be, I would hope you have heard of, and I recommend you read Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces, because if you're going to understand movies, the mythic, universal dimension of movies, you need to read Hero with 1,000 Faces, because the hero of Apocalypse Now is the universal hero, one of the 1,000 faces. So all these movies of the hero's journey is one of the 1,000 faces of the universal hero. And we're all the universal hero. We're all on a quest for life, for truth, for justice, for meaning. We're all on that quest in our own way, on our own path, in our own timing, but we're all on that quest. So if you read Hero with 1,000 Faces, that will help you get a mythic understanding of the story of the hero in ancient mythologies. And our movies are modern mythologies. Our movies are mythologies in the same way that the Greeks' mythologies were mythologies. They were the story of us. So this movie, Apocalypse Now, and what is apocalypse but death? And what is now? The power of now. So this movie, how do get into it? Because read my review anyway. It'll be posted. It's already posted, but I've already got it on my blog and I put it on my page. So I'll be reconnecting with it after I get this talk done. And the metaphorical pop of a movie usually doesn't come in, at least for me, until after I watch the movie and I begin unconsciously to connect the dots. I want to know, what is the meaning of this? What is the deeper meaning? What is the vertical meaning? The horizontal meaning is what everybody talks about. The horizontal meaning is is the cultural meaning. Oh, it's about Vietnam, it's about war, or it's about whatever we talk, but it's about this. The movie is about something. But the vertical meaning is it's about you and me, you see. So when you get that snap, when you get that satori, I call it a movie satori. That's Zen for I see, eureka. So suddenly when a movie has depth like this, not every movie has depth like this, but this one does. When you go into the movie and you're really fascinated, you're just totally attentive to it, and there's something you've got to see, there's something you've got to understand, but you don't know what it is. It's kind of like Sherlock. Sherlock, when the clues are there, but they don't all snap, they don't all come together, so you get the picture of who did it. And it wasn't until I was halfway through, or all the way through my review, that I suddenly got the snap. that this was the hero's journey. And our hero, and I can't even think of his name in the movie, what his name was, the hero. If the movie starts, he's upside down. And he's like Jack Sully in Avatar. He doesn't know what's real and what's a dream. He's in this kind of, when I go home, I want to be here. When I'm here, I want to be home. I don't know what's real. All I know is I need a mission. He needs a mission. He needs to go on the quest. He needs to go on the quest for the Holy Grail. That's what he's ready for. And so he gets the mission. He has to go upriver to assassinate this army colonel who's gone wacko. In other words, he's dropped out. He's dropped out of civilization. He's dropped out of the war. He's dropped out of the army. They don't know where he is. He's dropped out. He's dropped out of culture, so they have to kill him. And that's the thing about culture. This movie's about culture. And it's not necessarily the American culture, but it is about the American culture. But it's just about culture, modern culture in general. It has a gravitational pull so that if you dare leave culture and drop out, it will excommunicate you or kill you or declare you insane. But you'll be disconnected and cast off, you see. In religion, you're excommunicated or burned at the stake. So you can't, if you dare to question the essence of culture, in other words, culture lets you question within it as long as you stay within it. So you can get in a religion or something or a group that questions culture, which we're all doing, but that's culture allows that because it's still within culture. But if you dare to question culture itself, which is your own ego. Now, I've been writing about this for days. Our ego is a mini-culture, a subculture, an individual culture. So our ego and culture are reflections of each other, and they're all placemats at the cultural table. So as long as you have a placemat in the cultural table, you can argue with some other aspects of culture, fight with them and shoot them or whatever you want to do, but you're still within culture. But if you dare question the fundamental assumptions of culture, now you're getting into the apocalypse. So anyway, our Colonel Kurt here questioned the fundamental assumptions of culture itself, not to mention the war, and he dropped out. And I was reminded of Inception. And I love that movie. Inception ended up with, and the big danger in Inception was, if you remember the movie, if you go into a dream, you have to have a totem with you to remind you that you're in a dream, so you can wake up. Well, it's like Kurt went so far outside of culture, he couldn't come back into it. It's like he went into a dream down to the bottom of the barrel, but he couldn't wake up and come back. So anyway, that's just my, of course this is all my interpretation, but even so, it gets me excited. So anyway, the journey is upstream. So all journeys are always upstream, to the headwaters of the river, to discover the headwaters of the Nile, of the Mississippi. All rivers have the natives don't bother about it, but Westerners want to get to the headwaters. The headwaters of the Ganges comes out of Shiva's head. So it's a sacred place. So the headwaters is a sacred place because it's the source of not only me, but of my civilization. So anyway, so he goes up there and he goes through it. It's like going through Dante's Inferno. It's night scenes with light and macabre scenery and insanity. It's like madness. And there's that great section where there's the madness of the cavalry, the helicopter cavalry, where they shoot up a Vietnamese town so they can surf. Remember that? I love the smell of napalm in the morning, you see. One of my favorite scenes was when our hero and another crew member on their little boat were walking through this pristine primeval jungle, and the crew member was chatting away about his culture. The Americans were always wrapped in their culture. They were totally wrapped in their culture, listening to music, la-di-da, talking about this and that, completely oblivious to what was going on around them. They were totally wrapped up in their culture, like a cocoon, like a bubble boy, you see. And so they were walking through these primeval things. And so our hero, he's played by Martin Sheen, but I can't think of his movie character name. I'm sure somebody will remind me. So he's quiet, he's listening. He's always listening. Our hero is always listening and looking. Something's there, and the other guy gets quiet, and then this tiger leaps out of him, and it freaks the other guy out. And he gets on the boat. He's screaming, "Tiger, tiger, tiger!" And our hero says, never get out of the boat. If you get out of your culture, you're going to meet the tiger. If you step out of the cocoon of culture, you're going to meet the tiger. You're going to meet the Buddha. You're going to meet the tiger, who doesn't give a shit about you. He's going to eat you. You're going to meet life. Life is going to eat you. And that's why we get up to Captain Kirk, and he's talking about the horror. And then he says, you have to make horror your friend. In other words, you have to make death your friend. And he was admiring the Vietnamese soldiers because they had only they only had two choices, either victory or death. There wasn't any other choice. And so he admired them because they were not afraid of the tiger. So Americans were afraid of the tiger because we're wrapped in our culture. And I had some other, I wrote this on my page today, but I was reading about David Livingstone, a Victorian explorer of Africa, the undiscovered continent. And when I was a boy, I loved stories about the exploration of Africa, and I had maps of Africa all over my walls, and I knew all the animals in Africa. And I read about all the white explorers that explored the Congo and all that. And David Livingstone went into the interior and lived there with the natives. That's when Dr. Stanley the reporter, trekked all the way into the Congo to find him. And when they met, he said, "Dr. Livingstone, I presume." Just probably that's why people remember him, But he did report once where a lion leaped out of the forest and grabbed him by the throat and the neck and was shaking him. And if one of his men had not shot the lion, he'd be dead. But he remembered that, knowing that he was going to die, he went into this ecstatic samadhi state, full of light, and it transformed his life. So the movie Apocalypse Now was in a way a crack in the American culture, and those soldiers that went through that crack became mad. I mean there was a madness there. And I remember when I was in the Navy that when you went to a foreign port, the ship is culture. The ship is your civilization. The ship is organized. But then you got liberty. And I just realized what an interesting word that was. You got liberty. And when you went into a foreign port, now I'm just not speaking but I'm just speaking, there was a feeling was when a sailor or soldier's in a foreign port on liberty, he goes through a port, he leaves civilization in the sense that nobody knows my name here. There's an anonymity here. There's all back home. I'm liberated from the gravity of my culture, my family, and my morality, and the whole thing. So there's a liberty when you go through a crack in the cultural egg where nobody knows your name. And this has a lot of different expressions. Gangs suddenly, will enter into a situation where they suddenly do savage things. Or they do superhuman things when they go through that crack. They either lift a car off a baby or they kill a baby. Either way, extreme superhuman acts or extreme savagery happens outside the cultural egg. So Vietnam, was kind of like this crack in the American egg, and all these men poured in there, and you would be a 19-year-old from Kansas growing up working at the Dairy Queen with a girlfriend and a family and going to school, and then the army comes in and plucks you up and drops you down first day into a rice paddy, and you go up and burn a village and shoot some babies. Imagine. It's hard to fathom what that does, you see, to the psyche. That dropping you into into the primary process of our consciousness that is prior to civilization. It's like civilization is a veneer. They say it's a thin veneer. It's like a little paint job. But what's underneath, you see? And so the story basically is about going beneath that veneer. It's a Captain Kirk, played by Marlon Brando, who's kind of like a god. And this was interesting imagery too, was that you had to go through, this was in Cambodia, in a Buddhist country, so you went through, so this cult, these tribesmen, these rogue soldiers, and Brando lived in a cave, the imagery of he was bald, and the imagery was like Rembrandt paintings, and all you saw was his white skull, and he put these waters in this. It was like a priest in this water, and he put the water over his head. It's like anointing. It was like a Buddha. It's a Buddha's head. And all these big Buddha heads were around there. They're looking at you. This primal eye from the roots of humanity. This prior consciousness before civilization came in and painted us all. You see, it painted, like when you get a house and somebody, they painted the walnut. Right? So we're kind of like painted with civilization, and we live up on the we live in the lemon peel, and we don't get to the juice. We live in the lemon peel of life and culture, just running around. But the peel is a twist. This is why I like this metaphorically. The culture is a twist. You see, it always twists us back in upon ourselves, like a snake eating its tail. So we just go round and round like a Groundhog Day. So the story is about going to the headwaters, to that place in human evolution in our consciousness, which is now, you see. It's not in the past. They didn't go to the past. It's now. So if you want to go to the apocalypse now, right now, you see, you have to go down now into my everyday mind. So I need to be willing to go to the headwaters of me. Who am I? Where am I? Who am I, you see? That's the question of the spiritual quest. That's the question of the hero with 1,000 faces. Who am I? Am I just this paint job of culture? Am I just defined by culture? Am I created by culture? Who am I, you see? So our hero wanted to find, so the hero was about a mission to find out who he was. And then there was the sacrifice. And this was a beautiful ending. So it was almost like Captain Kirk, Colonel Kirk, willingly accepted his killing. That he, in other words, and there was primitive tribes were killing a bull, and our hero killed Colonel Kirk. One, they were hacking the bull, the sacrifice of the bull, and he was killing Kirk in a sacrifice. And then he left the sacrifice. He had performed the mad act. He had performed the sacrifice. And now he was purified, and he walked out. And he dropped the sword, and all of the tribal people and the soldiers dropped their weapons, and they parted. And he went through, like Moses going through the Red Sea, he went through the crowd. They got in the boat, and they went back to society. So this is the path of the Buddha, who goes up the mountain, awakens, and then comes back down the mountain into society. So the hero journey always goes around into the unconscious, into the insanity, into the archetypes and the dragons and the demons, and he goes through and conquers all and passes through all of the tests. And then he comes back up and he has atonement with the Father, and he comes back up and he comes back into society with a boon, with a healing balm. You know, he comes back to help his society. But then he's like Christ. He's in the world, but not of it. Whereas before, he was lost in it and he couldn't get out. So check out the movie Apocalypse Now. And I'll be watching Ken Burns again tonight. So anyway, thanks for dropping in, and I'll see you in the morning.